calling him the featherweight GOAT. Coming up this weekend at featherweight, we have the titles on the line. Yair Rodriguez looking to unify the belt. He is the interim champ. He's taking on the great. It's Alexander Volkanovski. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen, Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, Matt Allen FNP. And for both of these guys, they each competed at UFC 284. Rodriguez getting that win over Josh Emmett. It was a surprise submission win. And if you look at it for Alexander Volkanovski, he ended up losing Islam Makhachev in a close fight at lightweight. So really able to push some buttons in that one, though he did struggle in some of the grappling. I can already see it out there right now. Like, a lot of people so excited about this matchup, but they're still left with that Yair Rodriguez fight against Frankie Edgar, the loss that he has to Max Holloway. Don't kid yourselves, though. He's much improved since the Edgar fight, and that Max Holloway fight, a lot closer than people think. So if you really go back and you break it down, you might play MMA math and say, wow, Holloway lost 3 fights handily to Volkanovski. Only the last one was really handily. One of them he had a shot, or at least a bit of an inkling that maybe he had won. But if you look at it for a guy in Volkanovski, I mean, hasn't lost in years in this weight class. He's just continued to put performance after performance together. And if you really do consider it in terms of featherweight all-timers, Jose Aldo set the bar at featherweight title wins with 8. But Volkanovski right now tied with Holloway at 5. So it's crazy to see that for Volkanovski. He continues to build his name. And I know only in a few short months he'll be 35. But he still looks like he's got more in the tank in this weight class.
More in the tank might be a stretch to go just because he already is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter for most people in the UFC. I mean, it's him and Islam. They basically fought
Jon Jones is #1.
Jon Jones is, like, not active enough.
No, just by the numbers.
Sure, whatever, if you really want to cut me off for that. But for Volkanovski, skill-wise, there's nobody out there who's more skilled than he is pound-for-pound-wise. He's someone who can get it done on the feet. And what I love about Volkanovski, too, is it's not just his physical acumen and what he can do. The guy's extremely smart with his in-ring IQ. What I really like about Volkanovski is he's going to find that one little area of your game that he has an advantage over you with, and he's going to exploit it. And what I really like is the third Max Holloway fight really showcases that. He made that fight more about hand speed than anything else, because Max Holloway has good feet, right? He can get in, hit you with his shots, get out. But Volkanovski was able to use the leg kicks to make Holloway a more stationary target, and then get on the inside and use his faster hands to really bust up the face of Max Holloway. Now, Yair's a guy who I'm really curious to see if Volkanovski has that same speed advantage against, because Yair might be more of a kicker than he is a puncher, but the boxing has made big improvements throughout his UFC tenure. I think the Max Holloway fight definitely shows that, even though he was on the losing end. But for Yair, I do think he can have success on the feet, mainly because of his speed. Volkanovski, I know he fought at 155. He's a thick guy at 145, but he doesn't have the biggest frame in the division. So I do think he's going to have to get close to Yair at some point, and that's a buzzsaw you got to get through at some point, because Yair not only throws a lot of kicks, they're from weird angles, he'll set them up with his boxing. He's a really difficult fighter to move forwards on, and exactly, he's implemented many more elbows and knees into his game too. So it's not as simple as, oh, if I just get close to Yair, he becomes a much easier fighter to deal with, because now he's got BJJ off his back. It might not be the highest level of all time, but it's good enough to get you a submission win, a UFC title fight. And like you bring up, he's got the elbows and he's got the knees now to deal with guys who are going to try to collapse the range. It's just a big ask for Yair, because now he's not only going to have to focus on the elbows, the kicks and everything, he's going to have to worry about the takedown defense from a guy like Volkanovski too, because if Volkanovski is so close, not only can he strike, he can just reach for those legs a lot easier.
And it's going to be interesting too, because for Rodriguez, I mean, he won the Ultimate Fighter Latin America Season 1. He debuted at UFC 180. That was a Verdum card. Everybody likes those. Verdum, Velasquez. But if you look at it for a guy in Yair Rodriguez, out of his 13 fights in the UFC, bonus eligible in 12 because one's a no contest, he's earned 9 bonuses so far in the UFC. And one of those, the double bonus, UFC Denver, Korean Zombie, 25th anniversary. Crazy to see. But for Rodriguez, the last 2 wins, the Josh Emmett fight, and then if you consider it as well, the win over Brian Ortega, you're beating former top guys. And at the time, I mean, if you look at it for the Brian Ortega one, it was kind of, it was sad to see because of the shoulder injury, but you still get the win there. You get to keep that on your mantle. You get to like that on Twitter, and then people go through your Twitter likes, and they really worry about Brian Ortega, my guy. Yikes! But for Yair Rodriguez, what was the hallmark of his game his last time out that wasn't the submission? It was those kicks to the body. They were disgusting. So working those in against a smaller opponent, Josh Emmett, possible to do that against a guy like Volkanovski. And for this camp for Volkanovski, the big story going into the fight against Makhachev seemed to be Tiger Muay Thai, Bang Tao, like getting ready with the like all-time kind of training partners over there instead of just focusing down and hunkering down in Australia. For this one, it seems like he's well aligned with Joe Lopez to get ready for freestyle fighting. Obviously, you get that City Kickboxing connection, and you have big-time City Kickboxer on this card and Dan Hooker on the main card. But when I look at this one, you really boil it down and make it at its simplest. Will we get to see the grappling out of Volkanovski? Will we get to see some of those defenses out of Rodriguez? Because we've seen Rodriguez go strike for strike against good strikers and fare quite well in the UFC.
We definitely have. The other thing I want to bring up too is what happened to Roy Jones Jr. when he fought John Ruiz at heavyweight? He moved back down, and he wasn't as good when he moved back down. Now, for Volkanovski, he didn't make as exaggerated of a weight improvement, I guess, his last time out. He only moved up 9 pounds, and he didn't really put on a crazy amount of mass or anything. But I do think that's a point that has to be brought up. Volkanovski at 34 now, he's been in a lot of, I wouldn't say he's taken a ton of damage. The Chad Mendes fight, he got hit a little bit. The Holloway trilogy, it's not like he got away scot-free, but for the most part, he's not a fighter you really worry about in those terms. But I think it's a fair point to bring up. When you've been in as many difficult fights as he has, and you are the age that he's in, moving back down in weight, I think those are fair question marks to bring up. But the last fight I want to bring up for Volkanovski is, I think he's going to fight this fight like he fought JBC, Jeremy Kennedy.
Just straight for the takedown.
I don't think Volkanovski's going to want to play around with Yair Rodriguez on the feet, and this is why I say that. I think Volkanovski respects Max Holloway too much to go out there and play with Yair Rodriguez on the feet. And I know Max Holloway beat him, but, like, there's not a lot of guys in the world who can eat a lot of the shots and the combinations that Yair was able to land in that fight, even the elbows like you bring up. So I don't think this is going to be a fight where, Volkanovski kind of riding that momentum, oddly enough to say, off his loss, is going to go in there and wash Yair, because Yair just has the counter to a lot of what Volkanovski does well.
Rodriguez can go out there and play the straight game, and we've seen Volkanovski go out and kind of switch stances in his fights and have success from both stances, but for Rodriguez, 57 leg kicks against Max Holloway over the 5 rounds. It's crazy to see that for him. But Rodriguez, on the flip side, if you want to talk takedown defense, 63% in the UFC. He's been taken down by Emmett, Ortega, Holloway, Stevens, Edgar, Caceres, Feely, Hooker, and Charles Rosa. Got 5 of them in a split decision win for Yair Rodriguez. So the guys, they have taken him down, but he's also 10-2 with the no contest in the UFC. Now, Alexander Volkanovski is a pretty darn big favorite in the matchup. We threw this one out there to you. YouTube community tab. You guys have more votes than the Topology voters. Matt, 1,200 total votes. You can't see this one. I'm going to say over, under. Well, I saw it, so it's not fair. 77% going with Alexander Volkanovski to get the win in the fight. Your comments, 29 of them already. We got one from Sean saying, love Volk, but I think Yair catches him with head kick KO. His speed going to be a problem. How short Volk is, Yair going to get that kick to his head awfully quick. We also have some comments from the Rodentry Resistance. Yair is a dangerous fight for anyone in the division. It's impossible not to have Volk as the favorite against any 145er, though the man has proven to be a featherweight GOAT. And then we also have one, I'll go with the Lone Wolf. I hope Volk wins, but Yair is game, man. He's game, man. I still think Jose Aldo is the featherweight GOAT. And I think it's crazy to say consensus, because if it's a consensus, everybody has to agree. But for me, the WEC, the UFC, it is Jose Aldo. But if Volkanovski gets a win over Yair Rodriguez, it continues to build that up. And when you look at a fight like this, I do like the complete skill set out of Volkanovski, even though Rodriguez keeps getting better, and he's training at Valley Flow Striking for this one, where I'm sure Bilal Muhammad's a giant asset to have in the Chicago area to get ready for a fight like this, but I still do go back to Volkanovski in the pick.
Volkanovski is one of the better fighters of all time. I think that's fair to say. Whether you have him at 145 as the GOAT or not, it's him, Max Holloway, or Jose Aldo. 3 of the greatest fighters of all time. So Volkanovski is in that rare era at this point in his career, but that's when things get dangerous, right? You become complacent. You aren't kind of the fired up non-champion that you once were.
Kamaru Usman.
Usman was old, though, Usman was getting up there anyways.
Volkanovski's not young.
My point is, Yair Rodriguez has a lot of the skills that I do think can cause Volkanovski issues, but I bring up the JBC fight for a reason. Volkanovski not only has great ground and pound, he has great top pressure too, and I think he's going to be able to hold Yair down, avoid some of those bigger submission threats, but this fight for Volkanovski, remember the movie The Hurt Locker? That was a good movie, okay? Jeremy Renner's diffusing bombs. That's what it's like to fight somebody like Yair Rodriguez. If you make any little mistake, it's over. He has that kind of striking. He has that kind of BJJ, or at least he perceived as at this stage of his career. But How do you defuse a bomb? You don't be big and strong, you just be really smart. And that's what Alexander Volkanovski is at this stage of his career. I think that is his one big X factor. Not only is he incredibly well-rounded, but his X factor is his fight IQ. And that's something that you could be 34, you could be 44. That doesn't really just fade overnight.
No hair, don't care. Both of us going with the great Alexander Volkanovski in the matchup. And Matt, this is an interesting week because it's International Fight Week. You have a fighter on the prelims. I was going to say main card, but it's the curtain jerker to the main card. Robbie Lawler, he will be honored, canonized in the Hall of Fame 2023 fight wing for his fight at UFC 189 against Rory McDonald. It's a weird week with Fight Night picks because it was blue hair, don't care, but thank goodness it washed it. It took me 5 shampoos to wash that out. What I will say though is I'm away all week, so if there's changes to the fights, tough luck on this week only. We'll be back as scheduled for next weekend, but there will be no question mark kicks on Saturday. So what we need you to do is toss a like on this video, and if you want to hit up the super thanks to thank us for that great work, make sure you do. We'll do our best to respond to those ones as well. You guys are doing a great job out there with Fight Night Picks. We really appreciate all of your support. At Fight Night Picks, Twitter and Instagram, at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. We know we're fired up for the fights, and we hope you are as well. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.